finally saying goodbye to 2016, a year full of highs and lows. Which devices struck our fancy? Which gadgets fell flat? We're taking a closer look at our wrap-up videos and looking forward to next year as CES is moving the calendar up on tech announcements for 2017. Also, Galaxy S8 S Pen rumors. Why do Google Pixels keep freezing? And life after Cyanogen. Those stories, and we'll answer your viewer questions. So make sure you're charged and ready for episode 233 of the Pocketnow Weekly. Well, this weekly podcast is where we dissect and discuss those gadgets that make our lives mobile, smartphones, tablets, and wearables. It's all the stuff you wished existed when you were a kid, and gadget forums were filled with ways to unstick a frozen pixel. Often required rubbing the screen or turning it on and off again, but you could do it. It was easy. It was just pixels on a display. I'm Juan Carlos Bagnell, senior editor at Pocketnow.com, blasting the signal from another quiet evening in Southern California. Joined as always by plucky podcast producer, Mr. Jules Wong. How's it going, buddy boy?
It's going way too well for the end of the year. So obviously there has to be something, that has to turn up.
I don't know. So one of the things that I think is really interesting, and we get into this sort of, there's been this running hashtaggery over, 2016 has been a brutal year, and some of our, more beloved celebrities have been passing away this year. It's one of those things, I think it's always interesting as we get to the end of the year that there seem to be more of these people passing on, just, with how stressful the holidays can be, and, how the weather is usually terrible, and you've got travel and all of these instances of, celebrities passing away. I kind of think it makes sense, but it does make for a dramatic wrap to the year when I personally would like to sort of wish the family of Debbie Reynolds and Carrie Fisher. I hope they're taking some time to recover. I hope the public gives them the space that they need to come together as a family. I know showbiz families have to live enough of their lives out in public that can be a bit problematic, but for several generations of people, you're talking about performers that have obviously had an impact on audiences the world over. So hopefully they can sort out what they need to sort and grieve the way they need to grieve. I'm sure a number of people would sort of appreciate that too.
Well, there's a whole bunch of, it's about the time that we start seeing all those in memoriam reels, and we have to go through all the, sad things that we had to go through. We had to send Bowie up into space for good,
right?
And it just went on from there. And there's one point though that I do feel like someone was able to make good on, especially when news of this spreads across social media, and
Right.
It's all this crazy thing, and it makes it seem like more of a big deal than I guess past notable deaths used to be. And that is, as the older that you are, the more that you grow up, the more people that from all popular culture, they'll die, and it's tough to get through. So,
well, and also I think we're dealing with maybe the last generations of performers that really were household names. We're sort of out of the era of
this
old
is kind of
classic
a
Hollywood and into the disruption era of Hollywood, where we had the Spielbergs and the Lucases who were really shaking the system up and would ultimately become major parts of the system that they were trying to shake up. But this is the last era where I think you could be a star across all media and you would be recognized across all households. And I think that's maybe one of the reasons why this is hitting some of us so hard, especially people my age, is, these were the performers and the directors and the producers and the actors that I grew up with. And I think for future generations, that media is going to be a little bit more diverse. I think communities will be hard hit by the loss of a certain individual or a certain performer, but it won't have quite the same global impact. There won't be quite the same global recognition of performers in the future.
Yeah. Speaking of the morning of the passing away that we have seen in 2016. What do you think are the biggest takeaways from just going through the whole notes? I mean, a lot of them were just from the past half of the year. I mean, Project Era
Yeah.
is gone. So is the Note 7, and so is Pebble. Like, we've seen these pretty stalwarts, or at least stubbornly long-standing entities just float away like as if they were
No, I mean,
instantly
it almost
dust.
felt, well, I mean, in the world of technology, it almost felt like we kept tripping into these minor extinction events, right? Like Pebble hit me really hard. I'm wearing my Pebble Time. Maybe I'm back to wearing my Pebble Time because while traveling, I needed something I knew really well, something I could trust. I think that whenever we start encountering an era of extinction where companies that were playing with certain markets, maybe companies that were a bit ahead of their time, start dying off or withering on the vine, or are starting to have trouble in the market, I think it's an early harbinger of what's to come. And you guys have heard me, sort of fart around with this talking point on a number of different podcasts, but I think a lot of us in the tech community would agree that the general idea of how we use smartphones has kind of plateaued, that we're not really going to be seeing tremendous innovation on the idea of, sort of rounded corners, flat slab of glass, camera on the back. Like, this is really well established. And once we get to that phase where a piece of technology has been commoditized and starting to feel stale, that's what's going to spur the next era of consumer electronics. And I don't know what's going to come next. Obviously, you guys have heard me say I really hope that we'll see some traction on augmented reality services, connected cars, self-driving vehicles, things that really start tying mobile data and services together in a novel way from the way that we're using them now. And also ways that we can address some of the etiquette, some of the social interactions that have built up around mobile technology, that I think some are good and I think a lot aren't. And that's what I really hope is the next phase. But for that to happen, that also means a number of companies are unfortunately not going to make that transition. And so for all the hype that we had on things like wearables or modular devices, I think the problems that those gadgets solve can be better solved by other types of gadgets. And we're going to hopefully start seeing progress in new areas of interaction for data and services.
So last year we had a talk with the father of the modern cell phone, Dr. Martin Cooper,
Mm-hmm.
and he sort of painted this picture of a distributed computing, of being of not just going through the smartwatch, but going through smart eyewear and smart everything else in your home, in your workspace. Just not making sure that everything is not just combined into one mediocre slab, and everything's done mediocrely, but
Mm-hmm.
everything's done the best that it can be proprietarily, and where you would most use it. You don't have to deal and dally around
Right.
to have to avoid one thing to get to another thing. So I when I heard that from him, I was like, yeah, I could do with less clutter in my life. So if 2017 shows up and it finds us a way to step into that slowly, then yeah, that would be a pretty
You know,
good
we
thing.
we say that. We always say, like, it would be nice if we could kind of ease into this transition, but often these things happen in very jarring,
Oh yeah,
sort of
yeah.
shifts, you know what I
I
mean?
mean, all these little companies, they have to start somewhere, and but it's always going to be one big product release. It's always going to culminate, and that's the tangible step that consumers
Yeah.
get. So there's going to be a whole lot of that going on, I suppose, over the next year, and we'd like to know what you think about everything
Well, and
that has happened.
for people letting us know what they think, is there a special way that they might be able to join the conversation, Jules? Is
Well,
that
yeah,
something that they can
definitely.
do?
Definitely. So we're talking about 2016 and 2017, a whole lot ahead and behind us, and we want to involve you in the conversation. So hit us up on Twitter We're tweeting at you right now with the hashtag PN Weekly, and you can follow along the conversation as the show happens live. Hashtag PN Weekly. And for those of you who want to write us in, you can definitely do so. Podcast at Pocketnow is the email address. So podcast at pocketnow.com or hashtag PN Weekly. Either way would be the best way. And, well, the only ways that we really
those are
pay
the
attention.
only ways. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could try and like call me or something, but I'm not going to answer my phone while I'm on the air.
Yeah, I'd love to, chat with you on YouTube. And hey, who the heck is this?
Oh, look at this.
Oh, hi!
Oh my goodness, that is a loud Adam Dowd.
It's a Christmas miracle.
Chicago.
It's a birthday miracle.
It's a happy birthday. That's right. That's right. Happy birthday to the WebOS King
Historian.
Historian. All right.
Yes.
There you go, Mr. Dowd. Happy birthday to you. Happy New Year, Christmas, and Hanukkah, and happy
Kwanzaa. Don't be racist.
Happy Cookie Day.
Happy Kwanzaa.
Yeah, so I was sitting here, I was chatting with my buddy Cliff, and he said, "Hey, how about you podcast now?" And I said, "No, man, I'm tired. It's late. I'm tired." And then the weekly came on, and I'm like, "Oh, BRB, I'm gonna go on the weekly."
Well, I'm glad you're up. I'm glad you're able to join us. We were just sort of waxing philosophical about the things that we lost in 2016, the companies that didn't quite survive the year. And this also goes hand in hand with one of the first comments that we got on Twitter using the PN Weekly hashtag from Phone Diesel. Looking to 2017, what unexpected feature do you think we'll see on phones? And for me, I hope 2017 is the year we start getting rid of apps as we use them today. I would love for assistants to really start taking over more of the features on our phones. So that I'm having a more substantive, like Star Trek The Next Generation style conversation with my mobile tech. Maybe 2017 can help usher that in. What do you think,
Hey,
Adam?
Google. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I would love to see, and I probably actually speak better to this 2 weeks from now, but I'm really hoping that 2017 brings a lot more AR to the table. I just think that's just one of those things that we haven't quite figured out why we want this yet, and I think 2017 is when we're going to figure out this is why we want AR. And I think Project Tango, Tango, not Project Tango, will go a long way towards that. But I've got a few AR centric booths at CES that I'm going to be targeting on my couple days on the show floor there. So I'm really looking forward to see what people are bringing to the table.
All I wish for is that, I could say to Google Home, "Hey, Google, move my night to A6," and then, see it happen on Daydream. Just the virtual check. I could just do that. That'd be the best integration.
I need ridiculously super awesome high-tech technology so that I can play a more realistic game of chess. I like where your head's at, Jules. That's good.
Yeah. Works for me.
And you know what else works for us? I think you're working for us, Juan, Carlos, and a few other people are working for us too. Coming up in a few days, actually, we're going to be covering that CES. It's a cesspool of tech, but it has great.
That is accurate. And I think cesspool is a perfect word to describe that, because I don't know that I've left a CES without some kind of disease.
Yeah.
Don't jinx me. I was fine last year, and I don't want to catch anything this year.
I'm early on my flu shot. I'm dumping all of my vitamins into my various beverages, and I'm hoping I can make it out alive. But yeah, so we're gonna be sending a whole team of people out to CES to cover the news this year. First of all, doesn't it feel crazy early to be doing CES prep like New Year's Day? Like I might be on the road on the 1st just to get there to
prep
be.
on New Year's Day. I've been doing CES prep since December 15th.
Oh, but you know what I mean? Like, we as a team, we've all been talking about how we're going to cover the show, obviously, and we've been replying to PR companies and ad agencies and all of the entities that are going to be there showing off products. But I mean, like traveling. Like I will be in Vegas. I will probably be leaving either the night of the 1st or the morning of the 2nd. I still haven't made up my mind on that one yet.
As long as you're there early enough to pick me up from the airport, that's all I care.
I think I can make it. I think I'll be there.
Yeah.
Well, you guys have fun. I'm just gonna sit here with my coffee in hand and watching you guys in the distance.
You know, our
longingly.
CES calendar looks like a bag of Tic Tacs spilled all over it. So we've got so many
it's pretty
slots.
rough.
It's nice because I don't know if this was a coincidence or not, but like, you know, on this day we're going to be at Mandalay Bay all day, and on this day we're going to be in the Venetian all day. So I mean,
so you don't have to run around. Yeah,
so that'll be nice. But man, there's a lot of we're going to have to do, and that's before the show starts.
You know, I think most of the preparations that Adam has done on since December 15th were on his calves.
I mean, what?
Calves?
Yeah, his calves. Like he has to keep up. He was
You mean
anticipating.
calves? Like the bottom portions of my legs, or
I mean,
what?
Yeah, you kind of lost both of us.
Caramel, tomato. Like, come on.
I've heard it both ways. Said nobody.
Yeah, totally. I don't know what just happened.
You know what, Jules?
There's an L in that.
To save you there,
word.
I'm gonna hit some of these comments on Twitter. We just got a whole flush of comments.
Oh man.
From @Kenny, still so sad that so much death of tech companies this year, as well as icons. From Jonas, from Yami Yuki Senpai @Cyanogen Company shot and killed Cyanogen Mod. CM is reborn as Lineage OS, so he's hoping that see that resurrected.
We're going to talk about that in a few minutes, actually. So
yeah, we will be covering that. Joel G, at least BlackBerry isn't dead. Yet. Ed Modlin, and joining us a number of other people. R.I.P. Note 7. If there was the Sarah McLachlan music playing in the background for our special tribute to those we lost in 2016, I'm sure
they won't be there for us.
Get its own special screen right there.
You won't be there for them.
No, that's true. And then a number of people: Chamford Edges, Jonas Timothy, Joel G.
Love that name.
Yeah, I know, that's a great Twitter handle. And Clifton Thomas, all wishing Adam a happy birthday. Clifton says we need to point and laugh at you, Adam, because you're all super old and stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna be the elder statesman at CES at 40 years old. So. This
he's extremely young 40.
Before we hit the news, I just want to hit one more Twitter question. I like this question. This question makes me happy because it sort of agrees with my premise of what the future will look like. From that Emily Mavis, PN Weekly, how is market saturation going to affect the smartphone market? So we know like flagship phones have gotten pretty hot. I think 2016 was a great year to show mid-ranger tech. That like was a disruptive influence over why should someone pay $700-800 for a phone when a $300 to $400 phone can get a lot of the same stuff done. What do you think, Adam? As the market is well satisfied for your sort of general covering the basics smartphone computing, how do you think that's going to affect the market in the near and long term future?
Well, it depends because there's a few markets you got to talk about. There's the Western market where, the capitalist market where we all have, seemingly money to burn. And then there's, the next billion, the not so rich markets where, their smartphone is their only computing device. So as far as like here in the US and, more Western culture, we, people that have money, I think that the current saturation has simply whetted appetites for more and better and faster. So I think actually the smartphone market has a while to go yet before this particular pony breaks. if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think, yes, we all have smartphones now, but there are shinier and prettier and faster smartphones coming out next year and the year after. And, we're still all on, a lot of us are on 2-year cycles. So, by the time 100 million people are done buying smartphones, there's another 100 million that's ready to upgrade. So I think we can still ride that pony until it breaks. As far as, less economically advantaged areas, that is, I don't know, because there's still more and better and faster, and actually there's a lot more compelling offerings at the price points that they'd be looking at. But at the same time, for many folks like that, what they have is good enough. So there might be a slowdown in that area, but at the same time, it's called the next billion for a reason. There's a billion more people waiting to pick up smartphones at some point. So
I agree.
Yeah, I think we've got some time before we really have to start, seeing a major sag in sales.
Well, but I mean, like,
I am not an economist, so I won't even pretend to be one on TV.
Because this is one of the things that we've talked about on numerous other podcasts is the perception of this company. So these are publicly traded companies. Apple's a publicly traded company. We sort of use Apple to somewhat indicate the health of the technologies market.
Sure.
And it rarely has anything to do with how profitable Apple is. Right? Like Apple could have an incredibly successful quarter and shareholders could still be nervous about something, and the perception of the company can still cause the stock to drop. After every single announcement Apple makes, the stock almost always drops, then recovers, then rebounds, and then climbs ahead of where it was before. It's always something that's been kind of interesting to me, but maybe one of the reasons why it's good that we're not economists, because they don't seem to know what's going on either. But Jules, I'd love for you to weigh in, because Adam, I think, brings up a really interesting point where we talk about market saturation, because I think in first world countries, we are in the middle of it. I think the audience for people who need/want a smartphone is pretty well covered. I don't think you're finding some hot new pocket of smartphone adoption in the United States anytime soon. I think the people who want a mini computer in their pocket can find what they need, or at least can find what they can afford. Now, as we start looking globally, though, do we think that these new emerging 3G and 4G markets are going to be able to become growth operators, or are we looking at the long con? Are we looking at the long game? Like companies like Nokia, I think, used to walk into those spaces to create brand identity with ultra cheap phones, and then they, hopefully customers would build on that reputation. And I don't see as many companies working that same angle in quite the same way in 2016, but is that still a strategy that we might see employed over the next couple of years to hook the next generations of smartphone consumers?
So I'll get around to that, as there's this whole developed market that I get that the whole mini computer thing is kind of normalized at this point. I still think that there is definitely growth or impressive refresh opportunities in terms of introducing new features and services to those phones, combining more of them into the slabs that we already have. It slices, it dices, and it's the new iPhone 8. Now, whether or not we see a transfer, if we see developing markets do that, it's still a specs race for what income per capita that you find the median person at. It's still kind of hard to justify going into advanced stages of smartphone, even though there are some brands that are pushing that kind of thing going. Dual cameras, there's that hardware trend that has made its way to cheaper and cheaper phones. When it comes to just, figuring out how to deal with, all right, so we have all these 2G customers, we have all these people who still don't have a smartphone, and we got to round them up and get them onto this tech before. Like, India is like the biggest example of this, because they're just the government is really pushing down on cash, and it's going more digital, more cards, and they're not really taking the best management or approach to going digital in terms
Right.
of cash. So, and it seems like already existing infrastructure is just struggling to handle it. If the infrastructure is not there, then what good is like this super high tech miracle phone going to do you? So there has to be some hand in hand in all of that. And until then, yeah.
Because I'm really looking. I think those countries that are now just starting to flesh out their 3G infrastructure. Like there are a number of countries in Europe. I think Tony would maybe speak to this, our editor-in-chief Anton in Romania, where his country had lagged behind in terms of broadband adoption, only to a point where they hit this critical mass where the country supported a fiber initiative. And now that country is grossly outperforming most areas of the United States. I think it would be foolish for any phone manufacturer, a current phone manufacturer, not to have some form of strategy that they can bring their brand to emerging consumers now. If you don't, I think it's one of the reasons why Apple is actually in a somewhat precarious position, because they don't actually have the best entry-level options for a number of consumers out there. There's some status behind that brand, and I think in many countries around the world, flashing an Apple product means having some notion of wealth to play with. But it's a brand that's often lacking from a number of these markets, when some of these markets could eventually end up leapfrogging LTE, or the 4G LTE that we take for granted now, entirely, as their country jumps on board future technologies. So I think from a business perspective, it's always a terrible idea to ignore any consumers and not have some form of your product available to people out there looking to shop for those kinds of products. I don't even know that we can answer this. It's one more question before we get into the news. So this comes from Devin Martin. And if you guys can't come up with something for this, I think that's fine. This is maybe the most ghastly question we could get, given the tone of this conversation.
Oh, geez.
From @thetechman92 using the PN Weekly hashtag. What companies do you think we will see the final days of in 2017?
Oh my,
Jules, I'm putting you up first. What company do you predict will fall in 2017?
This is tough.
I have an answer.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say HTC because they're doing a good job with their Vive, but at least in mobile, I think that maybe they'll come very close. In terms of an outright loser in this, I'm not sure I can answer.
What do you think, Adam?
I'm thinking Sony.
Really?
I'm thinking Sony because honestly, their last few efforts have. Maybe it's just me, but it seems like their last few efforts have really felt phoned in. Kind of like
wah.
No, okay, no, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. No pun intended. Late. Pun achieved.
It's late, so I didn't really think that one through. But no,
I bet you have some pretty good experience in that.
Oh, man, here we go. No, I just feel like their last few smartphone efforts have just been. I don't know. Just kind of like
I agree. I think the X transition has been very rough.
Yeah.
Moving from the Sony Xperia Z to the Sony Xperia X, we spent most of the year on the X performance, and that was not a joyful review session for me.
But do you think it's just the whole handling of the transition, because the XZ did make some mark in there.
Well, it was one of the best-selling phones of the second half of 2016. In light of a very poor distribution strategy from LG and the Galaxy Note literally exploding. Sony seemed to fulfill some sales numbers that we haven't seen from them in a while. Because I think, to your point, Adam, it's funny that you bring up Sony. What I was going to say is, I could very, very well see where Sony would split off their smartphone group in 2017, like we've seen them do with previous computing divisions. Maybe in that it doesn't necessarily
that has worked really
die.
well for them in the past.
Well, yeah, but for whatever reason, major companies seem to think that this is a good move. Excuse me. So I could totally imagine where Sony would maybe make that move. PlayStation is making them cash. The camera division is really well respected. The smartphone division pulled some good enough numbers last quarter to make them desirable to an outside entity or to be a separate fork of the Sony company. I could maybe see that. I think the next one, this is going to Joel GJ's point. I'm a little worried about BlackBerry in their current form. I think
already forgot about BlackBerry.
Well, I think D-Tech isn't necessarily a step isn't necessarily a bad step. But for what that company used to represent and used to stand for, I don't know that they've got enough time to fully rebuild the brand and find a new consumer base before time runs out for that company. And I don't know that 2017 is going to be the death knell for BlackBerry, but I do worry that they're running out of time to impress consumers and to shore up their numbers.
Well, barring any,
2011 was a death knell for BlackBerry. So
well, yeah,
they're doing pretty good by some standards.
but barring any, performance, sudden performance jumps or pitfalls, like TCL has the license for making phones for the next however many years. I don't have the contract in front of me, so I'm not sure. So I think, when we define death, when we define demise, like what are we actually talking about here? Are we talking about end, kaput, done, zil, nilch, or like
I would define it as no more phones, but
yeah, I mean, what's funny about that, Jules, is I have more faith in TCL being able to execute consumer desirable phones than the BlackBerry label can.
Idle 4S with Windows 10. That was like one of the bigger Windows phones of the years. Like that's
and as we get in and we talk about our year-end wrap-up for the mid-ranger market, we found a significant pocket of idle fans who were very upset that phone wasn't in the top 3. So I think TCL and Alcatel, those two working together, have found a little foothold to start driving some brand identity and some consumer reactions. But we should probably jump into news.
Let's do that.
If we can get this show moving. And there's my rock and roll. That's what I'm talking about. And kicking it off, we've got some Galaxy S8 rumors to point to. Some good, some potentially frustrating. This is something that I've actually been wanting to see on all Samsung and Apple products over this last year, is potential support for S Pen across the Galaxy S8 line. We don't have a Note, so if there is a way to enable productivity functionality with S Pen, why not just make all Galaxy phones S Pen compatible? Same thing, I would love to see all iPhones be Apple Pencil compatible. Not to say that you get it in the box, but that if you get one, it will work with your Galaxy or your iPhone. So this might be a way to help Samsung recover, since we might be looking at a later Galaxy S launch this next year. Adam, what do you think? Is this something that would appeal to consumers are out there, or do you think that there's a harder separation between S fans and Note fans?
Well, I think here's my thing with stylists. If you're going to make them, if you're going to use them, you better be able to hold them on or in the device in some way.
That's true.
So the Note line, famously has the built-in slot where you can stick the stylus. It's one of those. It's one of those ever-present, omnipresent. There when you need it, but out of the way when you don't. Even the Surface, has the little pen loop that you could just stick it on there. Because honestly, I would never use the Surface Pen if it didn't have that loop on there, because I don't want to have to carry around a separate thing. So if you're gonna make the S Pen ubiquitous across the Galaxy line, that's great. I love it, but every phone needs to have a place to put that that S Pen, and therefore I would think, especially the way Samsung does it, every phone would have to ship with the S Pen. So, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I would love that because I'm a big fan of the stylus. But if that's going to happen, that's how it's going to have to work. Because otherwise, it'll just be, it'll be ignored. So. Nobody charged their Palm phones wirelessly until they started shipping touchstones with it.
So, but Jules, do you think that this is something that consumers can get on board? We've had the Note, several generations of stylus device. Adam's point, I think, is well recognized as not having some way of keeping the stylus. Like I remember the old Windows Mobile days where losing the stylus was a catastrophic event. So you would even have a spare on top of the one that would actually fit inside of your PDA. Does Samsung win points here, or is this something that would just become more clutter for the person who wasn't going to get a Note anyway?
I mean, yeah, if we've counted the whole fall release as null, then I do believe that there are financial incentives for those who were affected by the Note 7 to upgrade to the S8 anyways. So if we don't see that intersectional meshing with the audiences between the S8 and the Note 7, then yeah, there's. I want to shake you up and tell you, look, that's not the case. But the stylus is going to have to be there to, I think, placate that separate audience. And now we have a question of whether or not S8 users will want to deal with it, will want to try it out, and if not, what the heck will they think? Or will they just not even care and just leave the stylus lost?
Well, I mean,
like one of those AirPods.
Like one of the AirPods. Well, that goes to a question from Jonas Timothy here, Yamiyuki Senpai.
Kamau!
Would you pay for a separate S Pen? I'm kind of feeling, Adam, you wouldn't. If it were another accessory you would have to keep track of that wasn't built into the phone. Am I misreading you there?
If it wasn't built into the phone, I wouldn't use it, so therefore I wouldn't buy it. So yeah, I'd say that's probably a fair assessment.
And Jules, so you totally would, though. I mean, you're gonna fight him on that, and we're
glorious.
I'd walk around with a bandolier of styluses all the time, so I could just.
You have a gun. You have a machine gun of a styli to just.
So I can just distribute them to Samsung users everywhere.
Was that really your machine gun noise, Jules?
I wasn't ready to go.
Jules had a rough childhood. He wasn't.
His machine guns were constantly jamming on him, and he never really developed a good sound effect.
Well, I thought you were going to say constipated, because that's a constipated machine gun.
That would be, yes. But that's not the only news. Speaking of constipated machine guns. So we're revisiting a topic.
For every time someone said, speaking of constipated
all the time. I cannot remember a day where someone did not tell me about their constipated machine gun.
Yeah.
So
this doesn't make sense at all.
It was the 80s.
We're going to talk about sense.
So we've been on this crazy train of Samsung rumors, right? It's going to be a bezel-less design. It's going to have a 4K screen. It's going to have dual camera sensors. One of the ones that we touched on recently was that Samsung was going to be developing their own data assistant. And then, was it last week or the week before, I think, in the podcast, we said, okay, well, now it's seeming less likely they might be killing off their data assistant and just relying on Google Assistant. And now it seems that there's going to be a return to that notion of Samsung developing their own software for a data assistant. Excuse me, the Viv-based Bixby intelligent assistant, which will work system-wide for native touchscreen apps pre-installed on your Galaxy devices. And I still think this is a misstep. I don't know. Do you guys feel differently? Do you think that there's competition on Samsung coming up with their own solution for this?
First of all, it's no Alfred and it's no Jeeves, so you failed there.
I need to ask Jeeves questions, and I'm sad that I can't.
Second...
Oh, go ahead, Jules.
Oh, no. I was going to toss it over to Adam for that one.
Well, here's the thing. If there is a company that can get away with making its own personal assistant, it's probably Samsung. That being said, I think Google's assistant is pretty darn good already, and I just don't want to say, hi, Google, yeah, I turned you on. I think Google already has a pretty good system in place, and I don't want to see Samsung torpedo the Google efforts with its own unique brand of stuff.
Well, just because it's massive and it likes to throw its weight around, like it just, it doesn't have to, because when I think of nowadays, I've had to deal with, okay, this is a personal story here. So I've been calling up now to address some security issues, and apparently I haven't done due diligence and telling them about my travel plan, so they've locked me out of my account, which is going to be great for the next 3 months or 2 months or so, as I still am traveling and outside of the U.S., so I can't do anything about that until I get back. So I've been calling them up on their consumer hotline, and you know what they do with the directory? It's a bunch of just voice prompts. You have to say, check account information. Check. All right. Help.
Yeah, I just go
representative. But you can't, and you don't want to do that. You don't want to have to treat your phone like it's a freaking, I don't know, heartless, dead voice assistant that helps you get to heartless, dead customer rep. No, actually, one of my customer rep from Ireland, David. Shout out to him because he definitely helped me out with my problem, and he's nice. As opposed to, I don't know, maybe Bixby will have have actual tone.
Well, if our viewers' response to that is any indication, they don't have much faith in Bixby. Ed Modlin, just what I need, an assistant with a butler's name. Immediately after, from Clifton Thomas, Bixby is a great name for a Dowd voiced personal assistant. And then Joel G, but S voice is a POS. So I need to clarify why I think this is a misstep, in that it seems like it's going to replicate functionality from what Google Assistant already does. It seems like it's focused on the TouchWiz system of apps. But ultimately, I think there's still room in the space for someone to come in with a voice assistant, which really kicks butt. I mean, if you've ever played with Hound, that's a lot of fun. I don't know that I would replace Google Assistant on a Pixel with Hound, but it's really good. And so if we were to see some other advancements there, like I keep throwing out to an IBM Watson, I think IBM Watson on our phones would be a kick-ass way to interact with our phones. But if all Samsung is doing is using this as a way to encourage you to use their apps over Google apps, then I think this is a huge misstep for Samsung. And I think this is ultimately very bad for the Android ecosystem.
I mean, all Bixby. I think of...
Sorry, I was going to say, Bixby, play Shake It Off by Taylor Swift. Starting Shake It Off on Samsung Milk.
Yeah. So all of our viewers know I've been going through and I've been whining about smartwatches. I talked about my Pebble at the top of the show. I've got a Huawei Fit that we're going to be taking a look at. An early Christmas present I showed off on Twitter was my new Skagen, this new hybrid watch. This is going to be a lot of fun to talk about. And the Samsung Gear S3 Frontier. So I'm spending a little time with this to see what I can try and do to replace my Pebble before it finally dies. And one of my biggest frustrations with the Gear, spoiler for the review in case anyone's worried about that. One of my biggest frustrations is Samsung has made it compatible with other phones unless you like using all of the features on the watch. As long as you're fine giving up a ton of features on the watch, you can totally use it with another company's products. But if you want to reply to a text message using your voice and you pair it with a Mate, a Huawei, well, that just doesn't work. It'll just pull up the text message on your phone, which defeats
the best kind of fragmentation.
That's awful.
So this is why I'm very nervous about Samsung rolling their own right now, because they are really trying, in my opinion, to create some sort of walled garden around their network of products. And I don't think they've got the infrastructure to really pull it off while they still rely on Android and Google to actually build their phones.
Is 2017 the year of Tizen? Adam?
No. No. I mean, they're welcome to try, but no.
Well, I'm afraid of them switching the switch on. Whether or not it works is another question. But
well, I mean, smartwatches are actually a really good platform to introduce something like Tizen, because on like Android Wear is uniform to all Android Wear watches. So if Samsung wants to try something different, that kind of makes sense, because if they can bring something to the table that Android Wear doesn't already have, then I'm all in favor of trying to roll out Tizen on the smartwatch. But making that jump over to the smartphone, I don't see it, not yet. There's just it's going to come back down to apps, and unless there's millions and millions of Tizen apps in the App Store, it's just not going to happen.
A million Tizen App Store again. Maybe the play here is Tizen will use Bixby to interact with services for you, so you don't need apps.
Oh,
so I can go.
You're bringing that right
Bixby,
back around here, aren't you?
So this is my vision of the future. Hey Bixby, can you look up a good sushi restaurant within a 2-mile radius of me? And Bixby just goes out to Yelp and to Google, Zagat, and all of that other stuff, and comes back with results for me. And I didn't have to push Square Get App. It just does that. If Tizen can make that leap, maybe they don't need apps. I'm totally being facetious. Tizen.
I mean, well, yeah.
I was sold, man. You had me believing in you.
Well, I want that. I'm telling you, but I think this is why it's driving me nuts that IBM doesn't have any consumer strategy at all. Because I think this is exactly what Watson is designed to do, is to really intelligently sift through information based on very colloquial commands. Yeah. And this is what we need. But we're going to go the long way around as every company reinvents the wheel, through Google and Siri and Cortana. And
if one-sided, magical computing that allowed you to do whatever task you wanted existed, well, that'd be great. But we'd have to get through the weaning phases, and that could lead to some pretty nasty results. And that's why we've been seeing all the third parties just go in and tie their own stuff in, and the APIs go out. So that's what's really holding us back at this point. And I feel like that's going to be needed. That's going to be the way forward for at least the first phase of this.
Yeah.
Once we start figuring out, okay, so you need a delivery. Can we do advanced ordering and all these little factors, allergies and whatnot? If we can all think about that, if IBM Watson can just think about that immediately and ask the right questions to us, then,
but the thing about
that's far off though.
The thing about moving away from apps and using assistants only is who's going to build that infrastructure? Where is the assistant going to get that information, and most importantly, how are you going to monetize that?
Yep.
The reason that we have apps these days is because people are wanting to get something from you, whether it's your data or your information or your money. That's why people build apps, is to get that type of data. And if we're going to ask our personal assistants, find me a good sushi restaurant, fine. Where's the data store where the assistant is going to go to get that sushi restaurant, and who's going to maintain that data store, and how are they going to ultimately make money off of it? Because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing. So, is that all going to be maintained by Google or Yahoo? Funny. It's almost 1:00. All right. So is that going to be maintained by Apple or Google or Microsoft?
No, Adam, Yahoo was the perfect company to bring into that discussion. I just set up Instagram. I had to wipe out the Mate 9. I'm putting it back together again, and I logged into Instagram. And I was like, oh, let me also click in my Flickr account, which is tied to a Yahoo email address, and Yahoo has proven consistently that they can't keep data and security settings safe. So I've given up on Flickr, and
I remember
really
Flickr.
sad. Because I used to use that as sort of the fallback for all of my Instagram photos, and I had some really fun back in the day. I would keep really fun like albums of all my photos and stuff. And like I literally looked at my Instagram account and said, you know what? Sadly, I have to trust Facebook/Instagram with my photos more than I can trust Yahoo with my personal data. And so
there's always PhotoBucket.
And PhotoBucket and
or 500 pics.
But no, I mean, I think that's an excellent point. And I think it's one of those things where the technology is going to progress far faster than our ability to really keep up with how things are going to be monetized. And that might be one of the reasons why Google is slow playing Assistant across other devices. We got this question from Abdul Wahab. What if Google released the Pixel Assistant to everyone? Would that make Samsung's Assistant useless? I don't know about useless. Again, I think Adam's point is if you can bring new functionality to a device, then you get to win. If you blaze the trail, you deserve to reap the rewards of being the innovator there. But I think it would be a disruptive move on Google's part to sort of stamp out any competition from other device manufacturers looking to roll their own. I think it would take an even bigger company than, not a bigger company than Samsung, but one that has better expertise in that area to unseat Google Assistant. But it's again, I keep pointing back to Hound and Cortana, that they worked far better than I thought they would before we had Google Assistant. And Assistant in many ways just kind of catches us up to some of the functionality that we already had.
Well, all I can say is, no one can really touch what's going on with Google right now. So we'll have to see where that goes. Speaking of can't touch this, we're talking about HTC and
MC Hammer.
And MC Hammer.
Of course.
HTMC Hammer.
HTMC Hammer.
We were idling on that topic a little too long. We gotta
a little bit. Maybe we should
take it up.
Well, so again, this is another one of those on again, off again, hot and cold rumors. We know that HTC has something planned for January 12th, that it's going to be something for you, but we don't really quite know what that is. But we have a few more rumors to point that maybe it will actually be the HTC Ocean, or codenamed Ocean Note. Jules, can you talk us through this? What might we expect at the beginning of 2017, especially in light of how delayed Samsung's releases are apt to be?
So the Ocean Note is one of 3 rumored devices based on this Ocean or Sense Touch concept that was leaked earlier this year. HTC is supposedly behind this, and the Note would be this big, this big version. There would be also a so-called master version and a smart version. And from recent Taiwanese outlet reports, there's a great probability that we'll see the Ocean Note come out as a new HTC lineup, or the debut of a new HTC lineup, and that the January 12th event will see that happen. The Sense Touch thing, basically no hardware buttons on the phone. It's going to be, the leaked video that we saw used HTC 10 reference design, I guess.
Yeah.
But no side buttons, and there'd be a Sense Touch UI that you didn't have to touch the screen; you can touch the sides, and they'll whatever playback controls or navigation controls or whatever the heck, you'd be able to touch that. And hey, you don't have to touch the screen to see what's going on, and maybe hopefully improve accuracy. Like if there's one thing that we all get pissed about, it's I touched the wrong button. Let me have to go back. Blah blah blah.
Right.
So there's that. The Master is probably going to be one of the HTC One series or 10 series, and the Smart will probably be in the Desire series, all will be on this concept. It's not clear if those two other phones will launch at the same time with the HTC Notes, Ocean Note. But all three are going to be the first quarter in terms of launch. And this is coming quite at an interesting time. We're talking about as one so-called Note, and we still haven't really filled the gap in terms of serving a Note 7 audience, if you will. So there's a whole lot of questioning as to, all right, Samsung is going to have an event in April for the Galaxy S8. LG is going to be doing something at the end of March, at the beginning of March. They said the rumors about right after MWC. So there's going to be this longer than usual gap space between the fall and spring lineups. And if HTC can exploit that, maybe that might be able to help them out. Maybe not. We'll have to see.
Do you think... Oh, go ahead, Adam. I was going to throw it to you. Like, do you think that this an early strategy benefits HTC here?
I wonder two things. First of all, how confusing is it going to be if HTC and Samsung's are both making Notes? Because
well, it's not going to be the market name, but you know.
Oh yeah, we're talking.
Oh, is that
right
just
now,
the code name? Okay,
yeah.
I would imagine we're probably going to be looking at standard HTC branding for the actual release devices.
Although this again, I have to make clear that this Ocean Note is going to be maybe a new lineup, new series, new name. So
gotcha. Okay. Well, in that case, my second point is invalid. So let's move on.
Well, okay. So like here's the breakdown on strategies that we've kind of gotten so far. That Samsung might be delaying their S announcement until April. LG is going to be the beginning of March, but that's no guarantee that we'll get an LG until April.
Right.
I mean,
this product does tend to announce early and then release next.
Well, I mean, if the V20 was any indicator, we didn't get it for 6 weeks after they announced it.
There was a rumor that LG would bring up those shipping times, so the release and the shipping would be right up against each other. So that's according to.
So, but that's kind of what I'm asking is does an early announcement from HTC shore up the public to get them looking to spend their money, or would this also have to be an early announcement with like a very present release? You know, like
I mean, even if it takes 2 months to do it, I think they're probably going to do. The biggest enemy is going to be Samsung in this respect. So if that doesn't happen, barring any malaise that we'll see over the next 2 months, if there is such a wait, then I still think that they'll probably have a hopeful edge. Now, combining this, if we are to believe that this is going to come on January 12th, I personally do have my doubts, but Taiwanese outlets, you know, they always have the sources and whatnot. We think that also that there's going to be Under Armour action going in.
People have been asking about an HTC wearable, and hopefully we see something interesting there.
Yeah, and that's that. I mean, because if it's just going to be an Under Armour thing on a special event that's going to be outside of CES, the 12th is, that's way overdone for anything that will happen in Las Vegas. Like, there has to be something going on, something else going on that's like mind blowing.
So we just had we just had from Ed Modlin using the PN Weekly hashtag. Just had the nightmare of the One Max return. If you guys remember the HTC Max,
It was not a nightmare, I'll say.
And then also from Devin Martin, and this is a question I'm gonna answer first, and then I'm gonna throw it to you guys. From Devin Martin at the TechMan92, is HTC trying too hard to stay relevant? And I would say no. I think my biggest problem with companies like HTC and LG right now aren't their products. It's that they're releasing good products and then are completely absent from the conversation and consumer outreach where people would know what those products are capable of. I think the HTC 10 was one of the best / most underrated phones of the year. And so few people really knew what that phone brought to the table. There's this general awareness that HTC exists and that they made a VR headset. And then that's where it all stops. Like if you were to ask your general consumer, what's an Apple phone? And they'd be able to tell you about the iPhone. And then you say, well, what does the HTC 10 do? And they'd be like, oh. Adam, you spent some time with the HTC 10. And am I wrong here? Was the phone as bad as its sales numbers would indicate, or is there another situation?
The coating. I had the black HTC. Actually, you have my HTC 10.
I was gonna get it back to you when we're in CES.
You're bringing that to Vegas, man.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Actually, that kind of reminds me. Hang on one second. Okay. Anyway, the HTC 10 was a great phone. I loved using it. I was actually a little sad when I had to send it to you. But yeah, you're right. There's just it's mind share is really the main problem. And what I'm hoping that HTC does is if they're going to announce something, flagship worthy on January 12th, then I would like to see it ship very shortly thereafter. Certainly weeks, if not months, before any other competitor like LG or Samsung, because the idea of a phone is great, but actually holding the phone and having it in stores, in the AT&T and Verizon stores, months before the next Samsung is coming out, especially in the wake of Samsung's failure with the Note 7, you're striking while the Note is hot.
Well, because if they can get an announcement out January 12th, we're only 1 week out of most carriers disabling the Note 7. The software disable is going to be affecting a lot of people come the beginning of January, the first week of January. So if you can tell me that you're also going to have a new flagship grade phone out the beginning of February, then that to me is exciting timing. This is exactly where I was frustrated with LG. They announced the V20 the day before the iPhone announcement. They said they were going to be the first phone with Nougat, and they couldn't beat the Pixel in most markets to get the phone out. And even then, there are a number of markets that are just going to be completely ignored, like Europe and Great Britain, that just won't ever get the phone. So HTC, and I think HTC will also face a similar issue here. If the technologies are as radical as they're talking about, I worry that we might also see not only a much later release than the announcement, but that the initial shipping batch is going to be very low. That HTC probably can't command the same kind of manufacturing that a Samsung or an Apple can command, which means that those early numbers are going to be very, very low. Kind of like what we saw back with when they shifted to the One M7. That was a phone that was difficult to get out to the public. That phone was plagued with shipping delays, and it ultimately still did well enough for them to continue on the One line. But I'd be very concerned with HTC in their current space. I really hope that if this is flagship grade, they're announcing early in January that they've got the resources to really start moving units and getting them out to consumers as soon as they can.
Yeah.
Cross your fingers.
Did it.
That silence was filled with
crossed fingers.
Yes.
I should have been narrating my Yes, well, our last moving on to another. So this is something that we teased earlier in the show. And we were talking about the companies that we lost in 2016. Cyanogen is gone. The Cyanogen Incorporated is gone, and it seems that they took their the Cyanogen mod community with them. To a degree, where the infrastructure and the servers for the nightlies, the updates that you could get with your Cyanogen mod ROMs, also kind of got the axe alongside the proper
whole site,
entity.
like that DNS for Cyan gone.
So, but we're hoping that the people that were developing the developers that were working on these different ROMs and the community of people that were adding to that discussion, especially a lot of the folks over at XDA, we're waiting for something to load on Jules' browser right now, and it's not coming up. But we're all very hopeful that some form of that community will reform, and it sounds like Lineage OS is one. is one fork that could potentially arise from the ashes of Cyanogen. But in the meantime, there are companies who relied on Cyanogen for their phone software, and now that leaves them in the lurch as to how they're going to update their current devices, let alone what they might do for future devices.
Indeed. And Wirely Fox, UK-based phone manufacturer startup, is one of them that has all 6 SKUs that they have on Cyanogen, and well, beyond the tomorrow, I guess, over here. But yeah, I think it's tomorrow over there too.
Yeah.
So beyond tomorrow, they're not going to be able to support that. So basically, Wiley Fox just went out and did a blanket statement. Everyone who asked them a question on their online chat support got this statement, and it says, in part, our OS strategy and software plan moving forward will be complete soon. We have agreed a smooth transition where we will continue to deliver constant and consistent software and OS updates. Our plan is to bring our entire Wiley's portfolio onto Android N, the latest version of Google's Android OS, in a timely manner, while still continuing to protect the range and Google software security updates. We're not sure how this is going to be done and what infrastructure they'll be able to use, but we should also mention that Wirely Fox is hoping to continue to stay pure to Android and enhance our and maximize our consumers' user experience. So we've been talking. This is a low, like a budget phone manufacturer, and its unique selling point is Cyanogen amped up Android in a very odd market. I mean, we don't really talk about United Kingdom as much for just these startups. It's mostly US or Asia. So I don't know. What do you think about moving things on? Because Micromax in India has a brand named U, and one of their phones is Cyanogen independent. Zook, Lenovo brand, is also Cyanogen independent, and BQ also has one phone with Cyanogen. Like, how are these? Are they just going to be forgotten, or where do we go from here?
Well, I'm going to throw this to Adam, especially just because these aren't necessarily brands that we. Yeah, I know. You go first. But no, I mean, like, they're not brands we get to play with here a lot here in North America, and it kind of speaks to some of the concerns that I've had with other companies tweaking Android in between the manufacturer and the consumer.
I honestly have not used Cyanogen mods since trying to resurrect my old touchpads. So, God, there's so many Palm references in this.
Wow. Dude. So we just moved recently, and I found my Fire Sale touchpad, and that was a sad day. I'm
probably going to alienate like half the audience right now by saying that I just never used Cyanogen mod. I never really wanted to. So to me, this doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot.
Right.
But I mean, you are leaving, those manufacturers out in the lurch, and especially with, I have to imagine that there have been some internal communications that this was going to happen before the public announcement. But this is a super fast turnaround because this was just announced like a couple days ago, right? Am I crazy? Or it's
the whole thing was brewing with the layoffs and the statement of new direction.
I suppose, but just to come out, and be like, oh yeah, by the way, we're shutting things down at the end of the week. LOL. Good luck. That's not cool, bro.
It's Pebble X, but Steve, one of the co-founders of Cyanogen Mod and Cyanogen, Steve Kondik, he backed the move away from Cyanogen into more, and he's supposedly in charge of the lineage charge right now, while the other side is Kurt McMaster. There's been a whole switch at Cyanogen Inc., the company behind Cyanogen, and they're basically regrouping and starting from scratch in Palo Alto, moving away from Seattle, which was their home for a while. So there's this, I'm not sure, in terms of what their activities do to serve them, but in terms of, not having either side communicate with the manufacturers on this issue is just piss poor. It's piss poor,
Yeah.
It's the best way to put
way
it.
of business.
Well, and so this would be my shout out to any companies looking to be a smartphone upstart over the next couple of years is do your best to do your software development in-house. I don't see the value of hiring an outside party to write the code for your phone when Android is pretty easily accessible, even if your device ends up being a little bit plain AOSP. This notion of hiring a firm to cut a ROM for you, when you're still going to have to do some work on your end to make sure that the software is playing ball with your hardware, just seems to me to be a losing proposition in the long term. We do have one comment here from Joel GJ. The name to look out for in terms of ROMs now is Paranoid. I'm familiar with Paranoid ROMs. They're a part of Nextbit and are integral in the Nougat update for the Robin. And so that could be for people that are looking to customizing devices like Abdul Wahab. I would miss Cyanogen Mod. Having Android Marshmallow on a Galaxy S3 is great, even if it's a bit laggy.
Holy God.
And same thing with Jonas. My resurrected Galaxy S4 is using Resurrection Remix, Cyanogen-based ROM, which is also using Nougat. And so that to me is like, for those of us who care and are really trying to keep older hardware running, I think it's easy to feel abandoned. I think manufacturers and Google do a terrible job of supporting older hardware, even for things like just security. There was that shocking at the beginning of the year, there's a shocking number of phones, like the Galaxy S3 was still one of the most popular phones on the planet, kind of a thing. And knowing that that's just full of, software that's just got tons of holes and security exploits for it. Right. This is still an opportunity, I think, for a company to come in with some notion of appealing to users and enthusiasts. But if you're a manufacturer looking to try and get your software cut by an outside party, I don't think that's a very smart play.
What do you think about the app's approach? Because there was a point where Cyanogen was rumored to have, thought about maybe doing apps, less risk for both parties involved, and maybe less money, but it'd be more sustainable. What do you think about that?
If I remember correctly, was it Cyanogen Mod that wanted to come up with basically what it was an app that you could install from the Google Play Store that would basically install Cyanogen Mod for you? I
believe that was realized, wasn't it?
Yeah, I want to say it was at least a couple of years ago, but it seemed like, and what it seemed like they were trying to do, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like that they were trying to reach a less techie audience, because I mean, really, if you're flashing your own ROMs, you're kind of on the geeky side. So I believe what Cyanogen Mod was trying to do was to appeal to like more of a consumer level, like, hey, try us out, and all you have to do is install this app and push go. So I don't know if maybe I'm crazy, maybe I'm derailing the conversation. It's 1:15 in the morning.
This is true.
I'm just going to keep a running commentary of the time for all of our listeners after the fact.
And it's 43 degrees outside, very cloudy.
I wish it was 43 degrees.
So I think the notion of a company like that trying to shift over into app development, I think that's a sound strategy. It's just that they didn't really make much of a transition over. What apps did they develop and release to the market that they could make money off of?
Right.
I don't know. It's one of those things, again, I think
well, I mean, apps is part of a bundling, into, to sell to OEMs for their own OS or UI.
I again, so okay, because I just spent some time setting up my grandmother on an idol, and Alcatel has
such a weird statement, but
that's so weird. But okay, so there are a few little custom apps and widgets and things on that idle. Those are developed in-house because Alcatel has a vision for what their product should resemble. Again, I would say if there's something specific that you want your phone as a manufacturer, you want your phone to do with software, it's best to hire a team of developers and get it done in-house. I think relying on an outside entity, even just to do something like develop some custom apps for your phone, I think is going to be a losing strategy. And once they finish developing those apps, what does the relationship look like for support, for future updates? Is that something that could delay an update when you have to involve a third party in your company? Those types of things I think are losing propositions.
So if you can't afford your own software R&D team, then you cannot afford to go out tonight. Please tip your waiter.
I think your entry into the market is made significantly more difficult for the amount of money that you have to spend to hire third-party developers rather than just hiring your own, and finding solutions that you can really bring value and benefit above using Google services. I think Samsung can make an argument for their services because they're big Samsung and they can hire tons of people to tweak and customize and write software. I think if you're Blue, you have a much harder time answering that question in the affirmative. But speaking of Google, and speaking of Google caring about products, we did get a question in the live chat that I just caught. Does this mean that Android doesn't care about older devices? Whether or not Google cares about older devices, we're a little worried about whether or not Google cares about their current devices. With some of the issues that that have been reportedly affecting the Pixel, we've got a whole breakdown of just the different problems from boot looping Nexuses to battery issues on the Pixel to camera problems, and now a new touchscreen freeze. Which could be affecting the Pixel and the Pixel XL. Google isn't necessarily showcasing the most forward-facing customer support for some of the people that are affected by some of these issues.
All right, so this issue in particular is about the Pixel freezing up, no touch input, nothing can be done. It just sits there for anywhere from 2 to 3 minutes at a time. I included this one case, a YouTube video where the Nexus 6P also suffers from this issue for 15 minutes. But to be fair, that's the Nexus 6P. I should probably replace that video with the one on the Reddit thread of the Pixel itself. But that's my fault. I apologize for that. In the meantime, well, I shouldn't say in the meantime, but rather as an associated thing, like all these issues from the camera's halo effect. Well, they address the halo effect, but there have been issues about the camera taking weird green, purple pictures and not working with data or location. And then there's also the Pixel speaker issue that it clipped when playing even remotely loud things. All this goes through a process, through the threads, through customer support, through whatever, and several RMA units are just sent back and forth. Oh, it's the same problem, back and forth again. And after all these issues, it seems like, well, we aren't able to put in an issue for this, and we can't count this as an issue. You're going to get a refund. That's how the thing is resolved. It doesn't become an issue that gets looked at, and it's people want to be using their Pixel phones, but they can't. I talked to a guy last week who said, I'm giving you a chance to fix this, and you are not. You're failing me here. So. Yeah, this is. I'm pretty surprised at how Google is treating its customer support now in the transition from Nexus, which was a developer case, and understandably, if you have problems, you probably would troubleshoot them yourself, to a more consumer-oriented Pixel approach, where you're paying $649 for a phone, and you have live support and whatever the heck. And the warranty, you should know how to deal with tickets and deal
Right.
with actual troubleshooting and having a team concentrate on that instead of doing the next software update and completely ignoring all these other issues.
But Adam, would we have expected Google to really change? I mean, we've been talking about Google customer support and store issues since the launch of the very first Nexus.
Well,
Where
it's funny because my experience with Google customer support was actually pretty good. I was trying to replace my Nexus 5 with a shattered screen. That didn't get shattered by any normal means. It got shattered by me crawling through a tube with it in my pocket. And they came out with this. It was a very late. It was like 6 months after the screen got broken. They had this. We'll replace your Nexus, no questions asked. And so I put in for the return, and sure enough, I actually wrote an article about it on Pocketnow.
I mean, that's good hardware, conventional issues, but when it comes to like major, faults that could go into batch issues, that's something entirely different.
Yeah, and I just wonder how much of this is Google not empowering their first basically their first level technicians to escalate issues like this. There could be, I've been on the front lines of a support team, and there's only so much that you can do on that particular level. You can send up all the requests that you want, but if the folks on high are not taking you seriously or not getting your requests, I mean, you really do run out of options, and comes time for a refund because you don't have any other options, and it sucks. It sucks for the customer, and it sucks probably just as much for the technician that you happen to be on the phone with.
The supposed protocol for this is that they go through the RMA process several times, but nothing is done. Nothing is escalated after each time. That they don't look at the RMA units. They just
I mean, does your phone really have a problem if you never document the problem? Then really everything was good, right?
Yeah,
everything's fine. You just RMA'd everything.
Fine, don't worry about me. But no, I mean, but that's what it boils down to: is if you can escalate all the issues you want, but if nobody pays attention to them, or if you have, and I imagine Google has a fairly substantial support team. So I mean, unless if technician A, B, C, D, and E are all reporting, the same issue, but they're doing so, days apart from each other, then.
Right.
And there's no communication in between those technicians, it's very easy for a breakdown like this to happen. It's very easy for Google to not realize that there is a problem because, all these different technicians are, they're doing what they're supposed to do. They're, trying to get replacement, and it's not happening. So it takes someone, to step in and say, okay, there's a pattern developing here and we need to address it.
Or it's nefarious.
They're evil.
Yeah, Google.
They changed their slogan, right? Do no evil.
Yes.
And it's
do
all
evil.
Do evil all the time.
Do all evil all the time.
Do super evil because we're awesome, Google. Dag, yo.
Yep.
Just a quick shout out. I don't know if anyone noticed, but there was a 20th anniversary Homestar Runner cartoon that was just recently published, like I think a day or two ago. And that took everybody by surprise. When I caught it, it was like hours old and it only had like 20,000 views. And I was like, Homestar Runner needs more views than that. I guess like there's just that part of me that gets a little apprehensive knowing how quickly the Pixel was put together and that we're having all of these sporadic discussions about potential issues. I'm not going to play the smoke where there's smoke there's fire game, but where there's some smoke are we worried that there might be some fire since this phone was sort of rushed to market much faster than a normal flagship phone might have been?
This podcast brought to you by Apple. Anyway,
I mean,
well, I just
well, I mean,
2016, wouldn't it? I mean, it's.
I presume the Nexus 5X and the Nexus 6P were not really rushed into the market, and LG and Huawei had their own times, and we reviewed them highly. It's just, well, especially coming to this state, whether or not it has caught our attention in the past. We seem to be paying. It's more perceptible now that all these little issues, like the charge state bug, where the phones instantly shut down for no reason at all, and you have to get them onto charge for them to restart, like that's some serious life and death shit. So you gotta. And the problem is that if you're not going to recognize this, if you're putting the Nexus owners through the same crap that the Nexus, the Pixel people have gone through, then I think it's a different problem.
Or Adam, do you think that this is we're just getting to that point where maybe we're asking too much of our phones? Like, so many major manufacturers have had issues over the last 2 years. Like, are we just reaching that law of diminishing returns where Notes were exploding and LGs were boot looping and Pixels are freezing, and it seems no one can really can really make it out alive anymore.
Back in my day, we made phones that didn't reboot all the time or catch on fire. And we made them right. You could drop those things off a building, and it would just break the concrete when it.
All right, Papa down. It's all right. Just take your medicine.
Well, sorry,
I was gonna say, like, this is like Nokia by way of Chicago.
No, I mean, I don't think we're asking too much of our phones. I mean, are we having more problems with phones than we have in the past, or are they just more magnified now?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
I guess we won't know until we get a little bit more word as to whether or not some of these Pixel issues are systemic to the Pixel. Like for example, the lens flare issues on the Pixel camera are definitely systemic. Google has acknowledged that there's a problem with how the glass on the back of the phone will cause flaring on your photos, and they can kind of fix it in some software processing. But for some of these others, I think whether or not we're looking at an individual unit or an actual manufacturing problem is yet to be explained.
I don't really give it.
Bay will be filming his next movie using only Pixel cameras.
No, you can't, because you can't trust the viewfinder on the Pixel camera, because the software crop cuts off the screen in a way that's different than what you're seeing through the viewfinder. So you'll never be able to trust.
That might be Michael Bay's vision after all. Close-ups and freaking glares. But you know what? I don't give a freaking damn whether or not it's a small issue.
Whoa, buddy.
Man.
Body mouth. Okay, you're up here. I need you like here-ish.
We've had an S word and a D word in the last 2 minutes. We're earning that explicit tag today.
Yeah, exactly. But
Pocketnow after dark.
Whatever the hell the case is about these,
we got an H word. What's going on here?
Like, it's customer service.
We broke Jules. I don't know what's happening.
He's the one who's like recording most in the normal time of day for him. This is like late night for Adam and I.
You're supposed to freaking you're supposed to properly handle these goddamn issues.
So I think we can put a pin in that last story there. But that's actually one, because I know the Pixel is pretty well represented in our community, in our fan base. If anyone else has been having issues with their phone, definitely drop us a line. I think it's something that we'd like to follow up. It may be a little sooner than doing our After the Buzz series.
And don't drop a Google line, because they probably won't be able to help you out much anyway.
Maybe, or at least like try and do it on some of those public forums for Google. Yeah. But we want to wrap up this podcast talking about our own coverage on saying goodbye to 2016. We did a trio of videos. We're going to have a series of blog posts out on just some of the top stories from Pocketnow. Excuse me. But I was responsible for putting together a trio of videos talking about the best phones in terms of audio, best phones in camera performance, and then also we reached out to the entire editorial team to vote and rank the top phones of 2016 at every price. So we did our top 3 for budget phones, mid-rangers, and flagship devices. So those 3 videos are available on pocketnow.com and on our YouTube channel, where you can check out what the team had to say. I'm going to try not to spoil everything there, but just coming off of the Pixel discussion right now, so we were detailing the Pixel still made it on a number of our lists for good phones we were recommending, for good cameras, things like that. And, there's this notion that we can't be critical of a device and then also recommend a device at the same time. Like somehow that's not allowed. Or because someone bought one of these phones, that if we didn't say it was the bestest phone ever, that we're somehow biased. Unfortunately, and as we mentioned earlier in the broadcast, we as a team didn't have great experiences with Sony products this year, but we know we have Sony fans in our audience. We can both criticize and still be respectful of the fact that we do know that we've got some Sony fans out there. But when we get a ton of comments from them, and very angry and hostile comments from them, saying how we're wrong that Sony wasn't somehow ranked the best phone of the year, we're trying to be mindful of that, but we're also trying to supply evidence as to why we ranked the phones the way we did.
It should also be mentioned that Sony did win the popular vote, but not the Electoral College. So that's
by the widest margin of any smartphone vote ever.
Historical.
Yeah. So sorry, Sony, but what can you do?
So I just think it was interesting because the Pocketnow editors got together. I sent out a secret ballot where everyone had a certain number of points that they could divvy out. Well, actually, it was sort of a 3-vote system.
Well, I gave out sticks of butter, so.
Yes, you did. That for some reason, Jules wrote butter on every line of his ballot, and I'm not sure why. And that's funny.
You probably appreciate that, right? Right.
But So in voting out these phones, I think the winner for the flagship market especially was something of a surprise. If you guys haven't seen that video, I would definitely recommend checking it out. But when you guys were kind of looking at the wrap up and seeing how the vote played out, Adam, were you kind of surprised, or did you think that the Pocketnow team vote made sense when we were looking at the 2016 wrap up?
It's funny because none of the phones that I picked won, and so, but it's funny because I went back and I was watching I actually watched the video earlier today, and as I was watching the video, I'm like, oh yeah, that was oh yeah, okay, yeah, that was. It's like the phones that won were ones that like. I mean, you have to remember, I'm like the blue beat writer for Pocketnow, so every phone that I've used has been a blue phone this year.
You made your knuckles on the streets.
Right,
well,
exactly.
Adam. I mean, you voted for two of the higher ranked mid rangers.
Oh, did I?
You did well there.
Okay, well, and
In fact, I mean, for a number of people, so there were a number of people out there that were also complaining about Motorola, and so we only did our top 3 for each category. So sub 300, 300 to 500, and 500 plus. And there were a number of people who were very upset that Motorola wasn't better represented, but Motorola was just floating under the winners of each category.
Yeah.
Well, actually,
Moto Z.
So Moto Z Play. I mean, you Adam, you voted for the Moto Z Play, and I think that one was another phone that was very well.
So much for the secret ballot, anyway.
Well, the vote's out now. I mean, the results are done. PricewaterhouseCoopers doesn't hold on to that stuff after they give the ballot out. So
yeah, all right.
But I mean,
was it confirmed by an independent accounting firm?
No, it was just me. I was the keeper of all the secrets this year, and it felt good to be that powerful. But for a part of this, and I think I don't know. I really struggled with the concept of how to put this video together too, because I think this was a good year for phones in general.
Oh yeah.
I
think it's fair to say that there were no losers this year, except BlackBerry
and the Note 7.
And then it's over.
I honestly think I think Note 7 would have far and away taken the top spot this year had it
If
not
only
been.
it didn't blow up.
Right? That
You
little
had one
thing.
job to do.
Well, I mean, that's another thing. Is like it had a ton of jobs to do, and one of the jobs that we sort of took for granted, like don't explode, was the thing that let it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the details, you know. The devil's in the details.
Yeah.
Those little details.
Sub-millimeter details.
So, again, I think we ran into something similar in talking about camera stuff. A lot of people were calling me out for the Pixel, for example, not being higher up on our list of best cameras. And we put together these things called the Real Camera Review, where I will compile 2 or 3 days worth of shooting into a 10-minute plus video, UHD resolution, which is almost exclusively samples from the camera in real world conditions that are similar across every phone we review. So it's not like on a lot of other tech channel review sites where they take like 6 photos outdoors and they're never of the same thing. From phone to phone to phone. We work really hard to try and make everything as consistent and real world as we can. So I wanted to address
for just a second, but I know you like to name these things like the real whatever review, though you had the real audio review. I was wondering if you could switch it around and do the camera real review, because technically that works, right?
Yeah, that works too.
Or you could do the fake camera review. I think that would be better.
Oh, I definitely need to do one.
Where you
maybe come April.
Ooh.
I was gonna say you get your DSLR and take it out.
No, I know.
I took this with a Nokia 520.
So you're kind of killing me, Adam, because maybe that was one of the ideas I was playing with for an April Fool's video. But I wanted to address the Pixel specifically because I can't tell you how many comments I've gotten on, well, why the Pixel this? Or average users only want a shutter button, so it should have been ranked higher. So here's the breakdown on the Pixel. The viewfinder doesn't work for video. What you see in the viewfinder is not what the phone will produce. No other phone does this with software cropping. You know what phone doesn't do that with software cropping? The iPhone 6S. It doesn't have hardware image stabilization. It only has electronic image stabilization. So while you get this really great smooth video, if you don't pan on the Pixel, you can't trust how you frame the shot. If I took, footage of my kid in a school play, it's apt to cut off the entire top of the frame from where I'm centering the frame. That is a really big problem if you care how your shot is composed. In addition to that, we did have problems with lens flaring. The phone only records mono audio. And for most of our audience, I would say average users tend to have 2 ears for that binaural sound that you're apt to enjoy from the human brain. There are a number of these kinds of issues. Oh, and the white balance. The white balance is completely useless on the Pixel if you try and control it yourself. So
I am thoroughly enjoying Snarky Juan. So you just keep on rolling there.
So with all of these issues, what the camera does bring to the table, we appreciated. But if any other company had come out with these kinds of problems on their product, like if a Galaxy S7 was released where when you tried to shoot video, it cropped the video in a radically different way than what it showed you in the viewfinder, we'd have gotten savaged for recommending that camera. But even with those potential issues, I think the image processing, the HDR, the slow motion, and the color processing on the Pixel was still good enough to counterbalance some fairly significant problems with the Pixel camera to recommend it in our list, just nowhere near the top. So it's those kinds of things. Like, we are actively trying to give you guys evidence as to why it is that we're rating these cameras a certain way. It's not just, I took 6 pictures with it and I tried to shoot a photo of my dog and it didn't look as good as the photo of a dog that I took with a camera that I knew way better. So then that's why it's not as good.
Yeah, we're not one of those fake news sites like insert competitor here.
Well, I'm not trying to like call out other other tech editorialists, but one of the things that I really wanted to bring to this team was a notion of consistency and something where we could get into a deeper examination of the camera as a whole, where it's not just does it have a good auto mode and are the colors the goodest when you take the HDRist photos. I wanted to dig a little bit. I wanted to dig a little deeper than that. So we have reasons, and those reasons are in the Real Camera Review. Now, over 2017, we're going to have to take a hard look at how we do the Real Camera Review if we're going to continue doing it, because it is almost 3 days worth of work. And unfortunately, some of them are shared really well, but some of them have done very poorly in terms of viewership and in terms of sharing and stuff. So I've been talking to Tony. I'm still not entirely sure that this is a series we're going to continue. If they aren't, if we don't find what it is about them that can sort of generate more audience or generate more discussion or get people sharing them. And I don't want it to be like, we're only going to do Real Camera Review on the iPhone, the Galaxy, and like whatever the best selling phone is. I need this. I really want this to be a series which is accessible to anyone who might be shopping a phone. If you want to shop a OnePlus, I think you deserve to know how that camera is really going to perform. Not just, I took a photo of this cat and it's good. You know, like that's not helpful.
What happened to the dog?
Well, I changed voices, so I was like, I had to come up with a new example.
No,
so.
You're looking at this entirely the wrong way. You're just going to have to do 3 days of work in 4 hours. Come on! I have to think of everything here.
It was like I was literally trying to find a way, like how can I abbreviate the process of shooting a Real Camera Review, and like I can't. Like if I shoot at, in the middle of the day at sunset and at night, there's literally no way for me to tighten up how I can do that, especially with some of the setups that do require me to
do other work in between. It's called multitasking. Look it up, you millennial.
I think just because of that, I think you should outsource some of the work to Adam. He can definitely do it, right?
So what we'll do is I'll shoot.
Want me to do a Real Camera
I'll shoot all the daytime shots, and then Adam, I need you to find like super low light conditions and street shots, and we'll get all the night shots done.
No, I think Adam can find those very well.
That won't take more time.
I live in the suburbs. We don't have lights here, so it's fine. Easy peasy.
I kind of wanted to get that off my chest, because it's one of those things, like we are really trying to raise the bar on this kind of discussion, and it's something that's important to me. Like and Adam, I'm sure you can relate. We keep saying like, oh well, average user this, as if average users don't care about control or composition or output. And then I'm using these phones increasingly to capture some of my family's most important memories, right? My most important moments.
You got the little ones, so like
yeah.
Oh, 1.5 now, right?
No, 14 months. So
14 months. Okay.
She's still a little one, and so we were just out on the East Coast. She got to see the Atlantic Ocean for the first time, and there's one phone that I really trusted to take those kinds of shots.
The Alcatel Idol 4.
Yes, Idol 4. That's exactly no. I'm sorry, Alcatel. I really like what Alcatel's doing. It wasn't the Idol 4.
And I just want to put in my 2 cents on the Real Camera Reviews. I actually watched the Real Camera Review before I watched the device review. Just because, I mean, the 2 things that I look for in a phone are camera and battery. And I don't think we're ever going to have a real battery review. So I watched the Real Camera Review because I want to see what this thing can do. And, that's one of the reasons I own an Honor 8 right now, is because of, how good the camera is. And the battery life is just a very pleasant surprise. But, so, I mean, watch the reviews, people. We got an audience here. We're just going to have them watch anytime you see Real Camera Review, you push play. All right.
And share, and you send it to everyone.
Just autoplay all the Real Camera Reviews or real whatever they're.
Here's what you do.
Well, we do have a playlist.
YouTube.com/Pocketnow. You push play, you go to sleep. All right. You wake up in the morning, you'll have watched 87 videos.
You'll be so much smarter too, because you absorb all that knowledge while you sleep.
We should probably wrap this up. But Jules, did you send me an email? We have one, don't we?
Yeah, I sent you an email. Do you want me to play the bong bong? I'll have to pull it out though.
Sure, because it's going to take me just a second to pull.
Had I realized I have a Palm phone sitting on my shelf, I could have just opened it
Oh,
up.
do it. No, get it. No, I want you to do it.
No. It's too late. I already have. I have it up. It's from Grant Butler. This is an email sent using podcast@pocketnow.com. And Grant writes, the AirPods have just come out. Now every media site is basically reporting the same thing. Panic over losing one of them and the price of replacing one. I was surprised to see the price was so low, being half the price of what you paid for them, which seems fair to me. However, I see lots of sites reporting don't lose one because this is how much it'll cost you to replace. And then there being some sort of outrage, WTF. Why the face? Why is there so much focus on losing them anyways? Wireless earphones have existed for ages. Single ear wireless headsets have existed for ages. I've seen these wireless earphones in the past. Samsung unveiled a pair a while back. So why is this a new thing now? Apple are doing a pair. Just don't lose them.
Yeah.
You know,
Give it to me.
And Jules really wants to jump in on this, so we're going to start with Jules.
Because we lose things anyways. Like, are you telling me that you've never lost your keys, your wallet, a backpack that you probably left at that restaurant, and then, well, oh, great, you've already left the bus. It's just, oh, that's terrific. So yeah, we lose things, and the smaller the things are, the more frustrating it is because they're easier to lose, and they really like to dig into little crevices. So that's the most pleasant thing. Now, as addressing the consumer side of things, people are they are, and I guess we're also entitled to, because we think that just by purchasing, entering into this ecosystem of the AirPods, there's this sense of, all right, well, if I lose one, maybe I should get like a $10 or so discount. Indeed, I think the price of the each a replacement AirPod is 60 or 70.
It's $70.
Yeah,
It's
$70.
Yeah.
69. All right. So yeah, then that's just under half of the thing. But you want a free replacement, or you want like $20 or whatever the heck. That being the person to get on the train first, or go on get on the elevator from the bottom. Like that's I don't think it's a fair assessment of how we should treat any given certain thing. And of course, Apple being Apple usually attracts the most critical eye, the most widespread critical eye. So
Right.
yeah,
Now, Adam, do you think this is
visibility issue? I'm sorry.
I was actually just gonna throw it right to you for that. You're reading my mind this whole podcast.
Yeah,
But
it's a visibility issue. I mean, it's it's similar to. I'm trying to think of something that Apple did that everyone's like, duh, like killing the headphone jack. Like the headphone jack was killed with the Moto Z. I think they were the first ones to do it. I don't even remember. But it was just like all of a sudden Apple gets rid of the headphone jack and people start to freak out. It's just like, oh my God, how can you do this? Well, it's not really. Anyway, I think just because of the fact that it is Apple, it has a lot more visibility to it. And also, I've seen the design of the AirPods, and I can see those things falling out of your head real quick. I've tested a couple of wireless earbuds like that. I had a set of Motorola's. Actually, they weren't really Motorola's. They were just licensing. Long story. I did a review on them. Look it up. And, those were the types of things that you kind of shoved into your ears, and there was really no way that they were ever going to fall out without you noticing. But with the AirPods, I've never actually used a set of ear. Sorry, I want to make sure I'm pronouncing EAR pods. I've never used a set of those, but they seem to me, just with their design, they look like they would be prone to fall out. So I have to assume that the AirPods, AIR pods, Midwestern accents for the win. I would have to assume that the AirPods are probably similar in that they could easily fall out. The difference is that there's no longer a tether for them to fall out too.
And yeah, I'm sorry, but there's also the connotations that each company brings with them. Apple being one that is, of course, all corporations are driven by profit. It just matters how they get there, and in terms of not fostering customer loyalty, smaller players like Motorola, they include an adapter in the box, and do they offer a free pair of headphones? Because if not, well, hey, at least you can get them for cheap, and at least you have adapters to deal with, and they don't do their own. I'm trying to think
Here's
about
a 2
Samsung.
a.m. thought. Are we going to get to the point where people are wearing AirPods with pierced ears, with like the bottom of the AirPod sticking?
That's
through
already
the portion
happened.
Just to,
That's already
Has it?
happened.
People have already done that.
Google
Oh,
image
really?
search
Wow.
that stuff.
Okay,
But
so-
there's if Apple's much, and if another company is charging little because they think customer loyalty, they can ensure that by charging less for a replacement. That's different ways of getting through to the same profit motive. So
right.
I don't know.
So I'll weigh in here too, Grant. I think one of my concerns is, and this is sort of piggybacking on both what Jules and Adam have already discussed. So there's a notion that if I lose one AirPod, it should be about half. But that's not really accurate, is it? Because the AirPods depend on a system of 3 items, each individual AirPod and then the charging cradle. And each individual piece is priced roughly half of what a full retail unit would cost. So if you were to lose the charge case, that's going to cost you $70. If you were to lose one AirPod, that would cost you $70. And I find it just a little bit troubling that there does seem to be a profit margin built into the replacement part of something which is probably going to be easier to lose than a standard set of cabled headphones. So whether or not you like the earpods, I know some people that say earpods fit the best in their ears, and those are the things that are most apt to stay in. I don't see how, but they seem to enjoy them, and it's not up to me to say, well, no, you're wrong. You should buy something else. I will say that if you care about your hearing, I would highly recommend that people look at ways that they can do a better job of blocking outside noise so they can turn their music down. Because even though earpods fit in my ears really well, they do not block any outside noise. And I constantly have to crank the volume on earpods higher than on inner aural in the ear canal or fitted earbuds. And a lot of people can come and tell me, well, yeah, but they're just a cheap pair of headphones, and I like them that they sound good and that they're cheap. And that's fine. But I would also recommend looking up the price of a hearing aid when you're older, because those are often not covered by health insurance. And given the state of politics right now, it's even less likely that hearing aids in the future will be covered by health insurance. So how much is your hearing really worth to you in using a cheap pair of headphones? But I digress. I do find it troubling that Apple is building in a profit on replacement pieces for something that is going to be easy to lose in the near term. I think people will eventually find a system that works for them on not losing these things, but we're already hearing people sort of, complaining about the adapter, the Lightning to 3.5 millimeter cable adapter. Joe Rogan had a really funny bit. Oh, no, not Joe Rogan. Bill Burr. Bill Burr has a hysterical bit about losing the headphone adapter to his new iPhone and going to an Apple store where he goes and buys 5 of them. And as he's pulling his wallet out, he finds the adapter he thought he lost. It's that kind of stuff. I'm not even doing it justice, and I think I probably ruined the crux of the story there. But still, go listen to Bill Burr, because Bill Burr will tell you what I just told you, only you'll laugh.
Yes.
So I think, this is all coming at a precipice for Apple where we're concerned for Apple as a company because of moves like removing the headphone jack, throwing in adapters, being late to the game for the release of the AirPods. A lot of consumers missed the holiday season where the AirPods would have been a fun stocking stuffer, a fun gift. They're expensive enough. They might have been a full-on gift. I should check my privilege there. But then also the same thing happening with the MacBook line, the number of adapters that you need for the Thunderbolt ports on the new MacBooks. This doesn't feel like innovation from the company, and the company is the most public consumer-facing technology company on the planet. And I think we should hold them to a higher standard than a number of their competitors for that very reason. And that's why I personally have concerns over this move. Whew. That was a lot of talking there. I like that.
That was.
I think we did a
You were
good
doing
job
very
on that.
well.
Yeah.
Well,
Before
folks,
that annoying music came in and interrupted.
well, that annoying music means that we finally get to shut this puppy down. The show is over. Another episode of the Pocketnow Weekly. But the conversation continues on Twitter, where you can find Jules as @PointJules, Adam as @DeadTechnology.
Yes, Dead Technology.
Right?
Yes.
I remembered. And I'm humbly @SomeGadgetGuy. Now, Pocket Right Now is around the web, across social media, and PocketNow.com. We're everywhere, so it's easy to find us. And shows like this can't exist without your support. Sharing the weekly with your friends who love mobile technology and dropping reviews on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and wherever podcast reviews can be left. Adam, really want to thank you for jumping in, man. This was a fun podcast to prep us before we head out to CES, and definitely be on the lookout for our coverage in Vegas, CES 2017. We're going to have a ton of cool stuff for you guys to check out. And again, we want to send a huge shout out and thanks to all the people asking questions using the PN Weekly hashtag and writing us their questions via the podcast @pocketnow.com email address. You're helping the conversation keep going. That didn't work. But as ultimately, there wouldn't be a show if it weren't for our listeners and subscribers who have kept us on the air since 2012. The Pocket Now Weekly will be back next week with all kinds of delicious technology goodness from Las Vegas. So make sure you tune back in.
And a Happy New Year to you all.
Oh, and a Happy New Year. Yes. Thank you.
It's 1:55 a.m.
Well remembered.
We were asked on Twitter. It's 1:55.